Hello and welcome. We're so happy to have you with us today. I'm Emma.
And I'm Max. Today, we're talking about something super important: how to master English for business. It's one thing to speak English in daily life, but using it in business situations can feel a bit harder, right?
Exactly, business English is different because you need to be clear, polite, and sometimes formal. But don't worry, we'll make it easy for you. We're here to help you feel more confident.
So, Emma, what do you think is the first thing people should focus on when they want to improve their business English?
Great question, Max. I think it all starts with understanding the basics. In business, people use a lot of specific words, like meeting, deadline, client, or contract. These are words you might not use every day, so learning them is really helpful.
Yes, and it's not just about knowing the words, but also knowing when and how to use them. For example, in a meeting, you might say something like, "Can we discuss the project timeline?" That sounds more professional than just saying, "Let's talk about the project."
Right, and that brings us to another important part: phrases. There are phrases that are super common in business. Things like, "Let's touch base," which means let's talk or meet. Or, "I'll keep you in the loop," which means I'll update you.
I love that one, "keep you in the loop." It sounds very professional. And it's also important to know how to ask questions in a polite way. For example, instead of saying, "Give me that report," you can say, "Could you send me the report, please?"
That's such a good point, Max. Politeness is key in business communication. You want to sound professional, but also polite and respectful. Simple words like please and thank you can go a long way.
And I think another thing learners worrying about is making mistakes. Like, what if you say the wrong thing in a meeting? It can feel scary.
Yes, I totally understand that. But here's the thing: it's okay to make mistakes. Everyone does. The important part is to keep going and not let it stop you from speaking. If you don't understand something, you can always ask. You could say, "Sorry, could you repeat that?" Or, "Can you explain that in a different way?"
Exactly. No one expects you to be perfect. In fact, asking questions shows that you're paying attention and that you want to get it right. People will respect that.
And speaking of getting it right, let's talk about emails. Business emails can be a bit tricky because you need to sound professional, but not too formal, right?
Yes, emails are a big part of business communication. When you write an email, you usually start with something like "Dear name," or if it's more casual, "Hi name." It's important to get the tone right: polite but friendly.
Exactly. And at the end of the email, you could say something like "Best regards" or "Kind regards." That's a nice, polite way to close. And don't forget to check your spelling and grammar before you send it. Even small mistakes can change how your message is understood.
Yes, that's a great tip. Double-checking your email before sending it is always a good idea. And if you're not sure about the tone or the words, you can always ask a colleague or use a tool to check your English.
Another thing to think about is the length of your emails. In business, people are usually busy, so they don't want to read long emails. Keep it short and clear. Get to the point, but in a polite way.
That's true. You don't want to overwhelm the reader with too much information. And if you need to ask for something, make sure to be polite and clear. Like, "Could you please send me the documents by Friday?"
Yes, polite and clear. It's all about being professional but also approachable. So, Max, what's something else people should know when they want to improve their business English?
I think another big thing is meetings. Meetings are a huge part of business, and speaking up in a meeting can be intimidating, especially in another language.
Yes, that's so true. But there are ways to make it easier. One tip is to prepare ahead of time. If you know what the meeting is about, try to think of a few things you might want to say. That way, you feel more ready when it's time to speak.
good idea, and if you're not sure when to speak, you can wait for a pause in the conversation and then jump in with something like, "I'd like to add something here," or "I have a quick question."
Yes, that's a great way to join the conversation. And don't worry if you need a moment to think. You can say, "Let me think about that for a second," or "That's a good question. Let me see ...
That's really helpful, and I think it's important to remember that everyone in the room is there to discuss and solve problems together. So don't be afraid to share your ideas, even if you make a mistake. What's important is that you're contributing.
Exactly. And speaking of contributing, let's talk about presentations. Sometimes you'll need to give a presentation in English, and that can be nerve-wracking too.
Yes, presentations are a big part of business life, and they can be scary, especially in a second language. But with the right preparation, they can actually be a great opportunity to show your skills.
Preparation is key. Before your presentation, practice what you're going to say. You can even write down some key points or phrases to help you remember. And don't forget to speak slowly and clearly.
Yes, speaking slowly is important. When you're nervous, it's easy to speak too fast. But if you take your time, it's easier for people to understand you, and it also gives you a moment to think.
Absolutely. And if you make a mistake during your presentation, don't worry. Just correct yourself and keep going. No one is expecting you to be perfect.
That's a really good point, Emma. Business English isn't about being perfect, it's about communicating clearly and confidently.
Yes, exactly. And the more you practice, the easier it gets. So don't be afraid to speak up, ask questions, and keep learning.
That's the best advice. Keep practicing and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Everyone is learning and you're doing great by just trying. That's the best advice. Keep practicing and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Everyone is learning and you're doing great by just trying.
Absolutely, Max. Networking and small talk are such important parts of business life. Many people think that business is all about formal meetings and emails, but so much of it happens in informal settings. Being able to make small talk and connect with people can help build relationships and open doors to new opportunities.
Exactly. And small talk can be tricky for learners because it's less structured than a formal conversation. There's no set topic, and it often depends on the situation or the mood of the moment. But it's something you can practice and get better at.
Yes, small talk can feel a little awkward, but it's a big part of business culture, especially in English-speaking countries. It's a way to break the ice before a meeting, or it can help you connect with colleagues and clients outside of work. So, Max, what are some good ways to start a small talk conversation in English?
A good question. I think the key is to keep it simple and focus on common topics. For example, you could start with something like, "How was your weekend?" Or "Did you have a good day?" These are safe, friendly questions that anyone can answer.
Right, and you can also talk about the weather. It sounds funny, but talking about the weather is a really common way to start a conversation, especially in English-speaking countries. You could say, "It's such a nice day today, isn't it?" Or "It's been raining a lot this week." It's a light topic that helps get the conversation going.
Yes, the weather is a classic, and once the conversation starts, you can move to other topics, like asking about their work or hobbies. You could say, "What do you do for fun outside of work?" Or "How's everything going with your project?" It's all about showing interest in the other person.
That's a great point, Max. Showing genuine interest is really important in business conversations. People appreciate it when you ask them about their work or personal life in a respectful way. And when they feel comfortable, it helps build trust, which is so important in business.
Yes, trust is everything in business. And small talk isn't just about being polite, it's also about creating a good atmosphere. If you're at a business event or a conference, small talk can help you make connections that might turn into business opportunities later on.
Exactly. Networking events are a great example of this. When you're at a conference or a business event, it's common to introduce yourself and talk to people you don't know. It can feel intimidating at first, but there are some simple ways to do it.
Yes, introductions are really important in networking. You want to introduce yourself in a way that's clear and professional, but also friendly. You could start with something like, "Hi, I'm Max. I work in marketing." Or, "Hi, I'm Emma. I manage the sales team at Microsoft."
That's a good example. And after you introduce yourself, you can ask the other person about their job. Something simple like, "What do you do?" or "Which company are you with?" It helps keep the conversation going, and you can find out if you have anything in common to talk about.
Yes, and if the conversation is going well, you can ask more detailed questions like, "What kind of projects are you working on?" Or, "What's your main focus right now?" It shows that you're interested, and it can lead to a deeper conversation.
Exactly. And don't forget to listen carefully when the other person is talking. In business conversations, listening is just as important as speaking. It helps you understand what the other person is saying, and it also shows that you respect their opinions.
That's so true. Good listening skills are key in business. You don't want to just talk about yourself the whole time. If you listen carefully, you can learn a lot, and it makes the conversation more balanced.
Yes, and when you're listening, try to respond with phrases that show you're engaged, like, "That's really interesting," or "I hadn't thought about it that way." It shows that you're paying attention and that you value what they're saying.
Exactly. And another tip is to remember some details from the conversation. If you meet the person again, you can mention something they said before, like, "How's that project you were working on?" Or, "Did you get a chance to go on that trip you mentioned?" It shows that you care and builds a stronger connection.
Yes, following up on a previous conversation can make a big difference. It shows that you are paying attention and that you value the relationship. And that's what networking is all about, building relationships over time.
Absolutely. Networking isn't just about talking to people once and forgetting about them. It's about keeping in touch and building long-term relationships. And English is the language of international business, so being able to network in English can open up a lot of opportunities.
That's a great point, Max. And let's not forget about body language. When you're having a business conversation, your body language is just as important as your words. For example, making eye contact shows that you're confident and engaged in the conversation.
Yes, body language is so important, especially in business settings. Standing or sitting up straight, smiling, and making eye contact can all help you come across as professional and approachable.
Exactly. And something as simple as a firm handshake can make a big impression. It's a common way to greet people in business, and it shows confidence. Just make sure it's not too strong or too weak. Find a balance.
Yes, a good handshake can set the tone for the rest of the conversation. And if you're talking to someone online, like in a video call, body language is still important. Even though you're not in the same room, people can still see your facial expressions and your posture.
That's so true, especially with more business happening online now. In a video call, you want to make sure you're looking at the camera and not down at your phone or papers. It helps keep the conversation focused.
Yes, and try to have a professional background if possible, or at least a clean and quiet space. It makes a big difference in how you come across during online meetings.
Definitely. It's all about being professional, but also relaxed. And when you're speaking in English, don't worry too much about making mistakes. The most important thing is to communicate clearly and confidently.
Exactly. No one expects you to be perfect, especially if English isn't your first language. What matters is that you're making the effort to connect with people, and that's something everyone will appreciate.
Yes, business English is all about communication. Whether you're in a meeting, writing an email, or having a casual conversation, the goal is to express yourself clearly and build good relationships.
That's right, and the more you practice, the more natural it will feel. So don't be afraid to take every opportunity to practice, whether it's with colleagues, clients, or even in everyday situations.
Exactly. Practice makes perfect, or at least practice makes progress. The more you use English in different business situations, the more confident you'll become.
And don't forget, learning business English isn't just about learning new words and phrases. It's also about learning how to use them in the right way. That's why it's so important to practice in real-life situations, whether it's at work, at a networking event, or even in casual conversations.
Yes, practice is key. And even if you don't have many chances to use business English in your daily life, there are other ways to practice. You can watch business-related videos, read articles in English, or even listen to podcasts like this one.
That's a great tip, Emma. The more you surround yourself with English, the more you'll improve. And don't be afraid to challenge yourself by trying new things. For example, you could try giving a short presentation in English or writing an email to a colleague.
Yes, trying new things is a great way to grow. And remember, it's okay if it feels difficult at first. Every time you push yourself a little, you're getting better.
Exactly. The key is to keep going, even when it's tough. Everyone learns at their own pace, and the important thing is to stay motivated and keep practicing.
Yes, and if you ever feel stuck or frustrated, remember that learning a language is a journey. You're already making progress just by listening to this podcast and thinking about how you can improve your business English.
That's such a good reminder, Emma. It's all about taking small steps every day. And before you know it, you'll feel more confident using English in any business situation.